Hey everyone, Tom here. I am joined by Bob and Rich again. We're the Noise Brigade. Rich, we had such a great time doing our bucket list video games and systems. We had to do a part two on this because it was just such a great conversation. Had a lot of meat in there, and we have a lot more to go. And so we had to kind of split this off into two parts. Bob, good to talk to you again. Rich,
Yes,
thanks
sir.
for coming back.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So let's see. We kind of had a really cool conversation yesterday when we did part one of this. Just kind of went, all over the place. We did some games, did some systems. Just really kind of dove in deep on things that I honestly don't think a lot of people, at least go into that much detail on certain things that. It's like, hey, we really wish we had this. Rich, you kind of stepped up and was like, hey, I've got this, and or I've had it at one time, and I think it was like such a great perspective on things. So I just again I appreciate that.
No problem.
But yeah, let's dive in on this. One of these bucket list games and systems, and Bob and I, when you put the notes together on this, we were kind of like looking at consoles and different things. But really, the first thing that came to mind, because I was thinking I was really little, was a pinball machine. And I can never think of a time in my life where I never wanted one. I've always wanted one. But Richie made a comment on here. What are these things going for?
Oh, these things are insane. It depends on, you put it down here that you said you'd either wanted an older style analog one or the electromechanical is kind of what they're called.
Yeah.
Or the newer digital ones.
Mm-hmm.
You can pick up an electromechanical one that needs a little bit of work. For probably $800 to $1,000, somewhere around there, 800 to 1,000. The digital ones, though, they're still releasing brand new ones. A brand new one for a home unit, so it's a little scaled down from a one you would see in a, I guess like an arcade or something like that. They're 8,000. The home units can go from 10 to 15, depending on the license and how detailed they are. The real popular ones, like there's an Adams Family one that's known. That's awesome.
Yes,
there's Black
I thought
Knight.
about
They
that.
can be 10 or 15,000 too, depending on who you're buying it from. If you look around, you can find them a little cheaper, but you're still paying a couple $1,000s for a nice pinball machine. They tend to hold their prices, and they're cool. I always thought it'd be cool to pick up a beat up one and try to repair it, like an electromechanical one, because they may look complicated, but they're really not if you follow it through.
Yeah.
But
go ahead. No, go ahead, because I was
gonna say that'd be cool, but I wouldn't try doing anything with a newer one because they're just a little overcomplicated.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that I really recall as a kid. So my mom worked with somebody that my parents were doing some kind of work for his new house, and I can't exactly recall what they were doing. My dad at the time was putting in security systems, those sorts of things. But he had one of those older style pinball machines in his basement, and it was broken. And he spent like a couple of years basically refurbing it. And anytime I went over his house, he was like, hey, when this is up and running, you can play it. And so I was really young, 6, 7 years old, and I was super excited to see this thing working. And I was not disappointed at all. And I can't remember, and it was an old Gottlieb machine. I can't remember what I just remember having maybe an airplane or something on it. But that was it. It was really cool. It was fun, and it was really neat. I mean, the thing probably, oh gosh, I don't know how old it was then, but it was really neat. I've always, ever since then, I just was like, I want one of these things. And it's hard to imagine that some of the money that some of the newer ones are, the ones like you said, Adams Family. I always thought that was a cool one. How much money those things can really command.
Yeah.
It's funny too that you mentioned the Adams Family, because when I think of pinball machines, there's two that pop to mind. One of them is the Adams Family, because that one's my favorite. And then there was a Terminator 2 one.
Yes, I remember that. Yes. Oh, so cool. Bob, I know it's one of those weird kind of things, because I know you got some of the one-up cabinets.
Yeah, I've got one up cabinet. I've got it's the X-Men versus Street Fighter that has Marvel vs. Capcom and X-Men Children of the Atom on it. It's funny that Rich is here because the first time I think it was the first time I ever played X-Men Children of the Atom was when you lent me your PlayStation, your original PlayStation, and X-Men Children of the Atom. But yeah, I have that arcade one up, and I mean it's cool. It's definitely cool. We've had a lot of fun with it. I do need to do some upgrades to the joysticks, change the gates out because it's only a 4-way gate. It needs an 8-way gate so you can do the moves correctly. But man, they're coming out with some really cool ones. The NBA Jam one is out now, and you can play on the internet against people. You can do like online, just random playing against people, and then they've got the Simpsons one that's coming out with the Simpsons arcade game and Simpsons Bowling. And then they've got Turtles in Time, which is basically a reissue of their original Turtles arcade game, but it's just switched around. It's got Turtles in Time art instead of the original Ninja Turtles art. And I feel like they're doing another one. Rich, have you seen anything about the X-Men arcade game coming out?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to have. There was I don't know if it's the SNES game or a port of the SNES game that was War of the Gems, I want to say. No, that wasn't.
That one's on my X-Men
Okay.
vs. Street Fighter. But remember the six? I think it was a 6-player cabinet that and it was like based on the pride of the X-Men.
The Konami fighter, yeah, brawler, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're coming out with one of them too.
That's cool. When you brought up the Turtles one, that was a regret that I never managed to pick up the Turtles arcade one up.
Yeah, well, they just I think it might still be up for pre-order. They announced they're doing a reissue, but it's just going to be the Turtles in Time art instead of the original. But it's still got both of them on there.
Yeah, Rich, you have a note on here too. You actually have some arcade cabinets, right?
I do. I haven't spent a lot on any of them except for maybe one of them, but it wasn't terrible. I used to spend a lot of time on Craigslist looking for deals, and I actually found someone moving. They said that their father owned the arcade, and they were storing a couple of cabinets in their house, and they had to get rid of them as soon as possible because she was moving. And it was Tron, and the other one was Zaxxon. And she wanted to let both of them go because, like I said, she was moving, and she wanted 150 each. And she said she had a pile of people call and say they just wanted Tron, but she wanted to get rid of both of them. And I figured for $300 just for Tron, that would be worth it. So I got my brother and a friend of his, and I rented a van, and we went and picked it up. And we had to move both games out from her basement.
Oh, gosh.
But it was still worth it. I was living in an apartment at the time, so they were shoved in the foyer area of my apartment. But Tron's awesome. It's all blacklit, and if you remember the movie, especially the newer movie, the Tron Legacy, he's playing in the beginning, and it's just, when you think of classic old arcade games, it's one of the ones that first comes to my mind. The Zaxxon I later sold, so I actually wound up paying for everything by selling the Zaxxon.
Nice.
Oh,
Zaxxon is actually that's the one game that my dad always talks about. Like, man, I wish I could find Zaxxon. I really want to play Zaxxon.
And then after I had that experience, like, well, this is cool. I can get more arcade games if I wait enough and get them cheap enough. So I found a guy that was selling Wizard of War, which was always a game I liked on the Atari. I didn't even know it was an arcade game. But yeah, it's a maze game. There's 2 players. It's kind of like Pac-Man, but you can also shoot. And it has a voice board in it, so it talks to you as you're playing. The wizard taunts you.
Oh, cool.
So that's kind of cool. He laughs at you and stuff like that. That one, when I was living in Jersey, we picked it up in Villanova. My dad went with me to go get it, and it was cool because we got to this guy's house, and we went inside and went into his basement, and he had a full-on arcade in his basement. He had a skee ball.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, skee ball table, or not a table, you know what I mean? The
Yeah.
two lanes of skee ball, a couple pinball things, pile of arcade games. He was actually selling the Wizard of War to make room for another one. And then he took us into his garage where he was rebuilding a DeLorean.
Oh, get out.
And that was cool. Yeah, this guy was in a very nice house in Villanova. So again, I still had the apartment when I had this. So the Wizard of War cabinet is actually here at my parents' house. I was going to take it home, but my nephews like playing it, so I just decided to leave it in their garage.
Oh, that's cool.
That's awesome.
And then when I moved into the house, I always wanted a Miss Pac-Man cabinet, specifically the cocktail. And I found one of them relatively cheap and bought that home and played it for a while. And then the board went. And luckily, it was something easy where I was able to replace the board myself. And that's what's also cool about arcade games. If you find them cheap and they don't work, like 90% of the time, it's a power supply issue. And that's easy to either swap out the power supply or just fix the problem with it.
Nice.
So that's yeah.
That's yeah. My boss actually has a Miss Pac-Man cabinet, but his is just the cabinet. Has no original guts. It's got like the homebrew type stuff on it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Him and his wife go through and they battle on certain games, and he claims that she wore out the joystick trying to beat his high scores. So that's kind of funny. But yeah, that's one of those things I've always wanted. Like I said, pinball machine, arcade cabinet would be cool. Right now, mine is more like, because you guys mentioned the space issues. So right now I've got to clear a whole ton of my kids' stuff out to do anything like that. So
Well, I mean, they don't need beds.
no, not at all.
Oh, they sleep in a little nest, right? That's what kids do.
Yeah, something like that. But all right. Oh yeah, and we'll stay in this. I've got this note on here a little bit further down. But Bob, when you and I did the Sega episode, because we had gotten talk about Afterburner a little bit, and I had that kind of a recollection there. And while this wasn't a Sega thing, I mentioned Stun Runner, and that's one of those things. I looked it up on eBay, and it was like $3,800 for the machine. But that'd be one I definitely would like. Fond memories of playing it when I was a kid. And I think those memories, it's fun when that stuff happens when you're 6, 7, 8 years old. That stuff it's hard to leave you, So it's one of those things that's always been in my head. Rich, you ever play that game? Do you remember
I don't think so. I may have. Was there a Nintendo port of it? I remember the name. I just don't remember.
I'll be honest. I don't remember the console ports. I remember. I think the arcade one sticks with me so much because it was a ride-on. So. That's the version that I recall. There may be a console port, but it was a really fun game, or at least it was to me then.
So here's the platforms it came out on. Okay. Of course I clicked on the wrong thing. So it did come out on some stuff you could play at home. It was in the arcade. Came out on the Amstrad CPC, which I think was only in Great Britain, right? Or
it was, yeah.
The Atari ST. The Commodore 64, the ZX Spectrum, the MS-DOS, and the Atari Lynx.
Oh, neat. Huh.
So,
very cool. That makes sense because it was an Atari title. So
yeah.
Yep. Interesting. Very cool. All right. So the kind of jumping back up here, I'd mention a couple things here, and I won't go on to this. You guys can certainly throw in your 2 cents on these, because these are just little things that over the years, because yeah, I was a gamer. I'm certainly not as big of a gamer as you guys were, whatever. But there are certain things I remember, like growing up, that just, like I said, kind of stuck with me. And I remember, playing the tar out of Microsoft Flight Simulator, when I was younger, because I was a big PC. I was a big PC gamer. But I never had like that really realistic flight stick, because I always wanted one. Because even back then they were like a couple $100, and I knew my parents weren't going to shell that out for me, at least because it was one of those things that, yeah, I already had a decent joystick for it. Wasn't quite the great flight stick that I wanted, but they knew, and I knew, that it'd be one of those things that, yeah, you'll play with, but it's not going to get as much action as you think it will. So shelling out the money for something like that just wasn't in the cards. And I also, when I was a kid, I just always thought it'd make me a better pilot. So But yeah,
no, no, I
you
feel
got
your pain on that one. I feel your pain on that one. The latest one I believe is Ace Combat 7 that came out for Xbox One and PS4. Actually had an edition where it came with a Thrustmaster flight stick and the whole setup. And I had always wanted like a setup like that, and I love the Ace Combat games, and I really wanted to get that. And I was gonna pre-order it. It was like $100, $120, something like that to pre-order. And I thought about it, and I hemmed and hawed on it and went back and forth. And I eventually was like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna do this for that much to get the game, to get the Thrustmaster joystick, everything. Let's do it. And then of course I went to do it, and they were sold out. And then they ended up at one point they ended up selling out for the pre-orders, but then for some reason they had some around because I saw them drop to $80 on the website, and by the time I found out they were $80, they were gone again. So I still have yet to get my hands on one.
the Rich. I'm sure you've got a good flight stick or anything comparable.
I do not. I never got into the flight sims. I played the. There you go. Sorry, dog issues. I played the flight simulator. You're talking like the early DOS ones, and just no, never got into it. I liked the TIE Fighter and X-Wing that was out for the PCs. They were very sim-like, but they were Star Wars, so it was a little more fun. But I never had any fancy controllers or anything for them.
Gotcha.
Oh yeah, man. I used to love some X-Wing versus TIE Fighter and stuff like that. That was cool.
Yes. No, I 100% agree on that. Yes, awesome. Yeah, no, that was one of those things that kind of again, memory kicked in when I was working on these notes, and again, fond memories, and it's one of those things that I perpetually think about and would like to pick one up, but I just I don't know.
Going back to early PCs, the that made me start thinking of the LucasArts games like Sam and Max and Day of the Tentacle and playing them.
Yes.
Oh yes,
I'd love to have Day of the Tentacle again. I think there's a remaster out for like everything, and I may have picked it up when it was on PlayStation Now, but I haven't played that game in years.
It's funny you say that. I just played through it last year on PS4, and it's just as good as I remember.
I just picked up the soundtrack on vinyl, so I'm looking forward to listening to that.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Did you get the, I know it's not the original Sam & Max, like Sam & Max Hit the Road, but did you get the limited run copy of Sam & Max that got put up there?
I didn't. I got Monkey Island.
Okay.
And I missed Sam & Max. But yeah, because I actually haven't played any of the Sam & Max games.
Okay.
I watched the cartoon.
Yeah, cartoon was good. I remember the Sam & Max Hit the Road for PC back in the day was one of the best point and click. And I know it wasn't LucasArts, but it was that same. It seemed like it was the same style, the point and click adventures. Just super fun game. I'm glad it's coming out. The newer ones are coming out for the Switch and PS4.
That's funny you said that, and it really triggered a memory there, guys. I had a copy of Maniac Mansion for the Amiga.
Oh,
and I remember playing the tar out of that because that was one of the great things is growing up is granted I had a Nintendo at the time, and that was the only console that I had because my parents were big personal computing people. In fact, the first PC they brought into the house was 1979, so it predated me even. So I literally grew up with it, but as time went on, Dad had picked up an Amiga 1000, which to me to this day was well ahead of its time.
Yes, Amigas are awesome.
Yes. In fact, Rich, you'd appreciate this. A few years ago, at our high school, we were clearing out one of our old closets because the art teacher needed it for space. And she said, "Yeah, there's some old computer equipment back there." And we uncovered a working Amiga 2000 HD.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it hadn't been turned on. We figured the last time it was turned on based on like how things were sorted in the room and whatnot was we fired it up. It's been a few years now, but it was probably nearly I think 1997 had been the last time it had been turned on. So it was pretty cool. but yeah, I had that game. But it's funny enough, I had a note on here, and this just reminded me. I remember getting Double Dragon for the Amiga, but the funny thing was it never worked, and we don't know why. And I recall that my parents went back and forth like 5 different times to get different copies, assuming that the game was bad, and just it never worked. And so it was one of those things that, yeah, it's Double Dragon. I've played it, time and time again on different things, whether it's in the arcade or for different systems or whatever over the years. But I always wanted it for that because I was a little kid and it never worked, and I was so disappointed. Because it was just one of those things. So, Rich, did you ever have an Amiga or anything?
Amiga is one of those ones that no, I've never had. I've got to use somebody else's a couple of times, and yeah, the graphics, especially for the time they came out, were just amazing. Like I said, I started out with a Commodore 64. I have a Commodore 64 again now. I have a Apple IIgs, which is an awesome
Nice.
system, yeah. And then I have the Tandy Color computer, which doesn't get a lot of use, and PC Junior, which gets no use. It's actually boxed up in my attic because it's a horrible system. But the Amiga is one of those ones that, yeah, I'd love to have one. I never used one. Like I said, never used one a lot before, but they go for a hefty price. I mean, it's not terribly expensive considering everything else, but it's just, like I said, a little more than I want to spend not having that nostalgia for it, I guess.
Yeah, no, we thought about turning the one we found at work over just to see, and we held on to it because, like you said, it was commanding some money, but not enough to sell, and so we just held on to it, and we're gonna, and Bob knows this because Bob's done an episode. The high school that is in the school district that I work at has had an esports program for several years now, and the guy that's the coach of it is redoing a couple of our labs to make an arena for them, and part of it though, he's going to put in some like older consoles, older equipment, just to have as kind of like a little museum portion, which I thought was really cool, and he's going to throw the Amiga in there with it. So
when I left the help desk job I was working at the law firm, and kind of went off and did my first QA, like real technical job, because I'm considered the help desk stuff. The people I was contracting under were running a BBS off of an Amiga in their office,
nice.
And I thought that was the coolest thing.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah,
wow.
Because this was graduate. This would have been 2001, 2002. So yeah, the guy had one when he was a kid. That he ran the BBS off of, and when he founded his business, he brought his old Amiga into the office and just kept it there.
Oh, that was
cool. Yeah.
That's so cool. And one of the simple things I remember too as a kid with the one we had was that, and again, this sounds silly now, but again, for the time, 1987, 1988, typing things in and having the computer dictate it back to you.
Yes.
It's crazy, absolutely crazy. But it was so funny because just, the way it said it and, the pronunciation would just crack, it would crack you up. And
to bring Bob back in this a little bit, the Amiga is where the Worm series started.
Oh, get out!
It was
really?
created for the Amiga. Yeah.
Okay. And it's funny hearing you mention the Commodore 64, because actually my first experience with that was at your house with you playing Hero.
Yeah, I love that game.
Nice.
That was a cool game.
Yeah, no,
going back to Maniac Mansion. That's like one of my favorite games of all time too. And I actually I have a boxed Commodore 64 version, a complete NES version, and then the IBM version I found later on at a yard sale that I picked up.
Oh, cool!
So just every time I see that, I pick it up.
Yeah, that's one of those games I fond memories of, and absolutely love playing it. And the other ones too. And did we talk about the Monkey Island games? Have we talked about those?
We brought it up briefly.
Yeah, those are other ones that I remember playing, to no end, and I know you mentioned Sam and Max, and just incredible games that were coming out, then, and it's almost a shame that, to me anyway, not all of them, but a good part of them were way ahead of their time too for what they were and what they brought to the table.
And speaking of those games too, that just made me think. I actually have on my Switch ready to get into Grim Fandango Remastered.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So it's cool. That's a good system, I think, for those kind of games. But, they've been releasing some of those. I'm just double checking to see if I have any of the other ones. But no, I definitely have Grim Fandango on there. I think Full Throttle got a re-release for it too. I might be wrong on that one. I know that got a re-release, but
yeah.
Speaking of a couple other games, again, I don't want to. I certainly won't speak on these too much. These are just a couple things that popped in my head. Bob, whenever you and I were doing the Sega episode, this actually popped in my head at the time, but I never had it for the Sega Saturn. But I had it for PC, and I played the tar out of it for that. Was Warcraft 2, and I knew that there was a copy of it that had come out. I think it was about a year and a half or 2 years later that it had come out. Like it was PC, and then like a year and a half, 2 years later, it came out for Saturn or something like that. And it was more of a curiosity thing though, because I was like, I wonder how this ported over, because the type of game that it was for me, I couldn't think that it was that great. But then every review that I read was like, it's really not bad, So it was one of those things. Did either of you guys have that game for Saturn or play it for Saturn?
No, I mentioned this on the Sega episode. The only RTS I played on any Sega system was Herzog's Y. That was it, and that played really well. But that was bare bones compared to the Warcraft series.
Gotcha. What about you, Rich?
I didn't have Warcraft 2, but I have Warcraft 1 for the PlayStation.
So how was that on the PlayStation? Because I've never played that one.
It's actually a pretty decent port of the PC. What's nice is it supports the PlayStation had a mouse peripheral kind of like the SNES had, and it works with that. There's a Diablo port for the PlayStation, which is kind of nice.
I played that. That was pretty decent.
And Civilization 2, I played more on the PlayStation than on the PC.
Now, how was that port comparative?
Very good. Just as good as the PC version, I would say.
Oh wow! Okay, cool. Yeah, that's as I played a ton of Civ 2 and Civ 3. Really were the ones I played a lot of.
Yeah.
I had 3, but I played the most of Civ 1. Again, I think we found that at a yard sale and brought it home, and I just really got into it. Yeah, and then every once in a while, I bring it up in DOSBox and still play it. Yeah.
And Civ 1 was one that Rich, you let me borrow to put on my computer as well, and that was my introduction to the series. And then I played some of Civ 2, and I got really into Civilization Revolution on the 360. And then I've been playing the second one for the iPhone. I just beat it with every civilization and everything. It's like I'm done with it on the phone, but that series is awesome.
Mm-hmm. I've got Civ 6 for the Switch, which they got it really. It's funny. It was one of those games that I think they had on sale for like $10 or $15.
Yeah, I have that too, but I haven't played it.
Yeah, I will say this: it's really nice, but you can get into it for 3 or 4 hours, and then like I've had it, and I've tried it on a couple different Switches, and it was crash. And it's like, because then by that point it's like, okay, well, where did it save? And I was like, it was 8 turns ago, and I'm like,
Yeah, I got it for $10 for the Switch, and I've wanted to pick it up, but I just every time I go to pick it up, something happens, and I just can't devote the time to it. So
yeah,
I haven't played it, but eventually it's there in the backlog with the rest of the other 60 games I have for the Switch while I play NFL 2K5.
This one here is probably the last software one I have on here. Was one that Bob, you and I talked about Funko Land on the Sega episode.
Yes.
And this one, and the reason why I mentioned this game, Ogre Battle for the Super Nintendo, was at the time when I first really started, frequenting that store, was it always seemed to be the most expensive, like they had listed. And whether or not it was, the way it was perceived that way, it just always seemed to be one of those things that always commanded a top dollar no matter what. And I always wanted to play it, never did, or at least own that one. I never did. Either you guys have that one or any experience with that?
No.
Rich, how about you?
Yeah, I've never played Ogre Battle either, but I do like tactical RPGs. It's not Shining Force. Is it Shining Force? That's I don't
Shining
remember
Force
the other one.
Shining Force is the Sega tactical RPG.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's one of those games I just, I think it was more of a curiosity thing. Like, oh, why was this game $150 back in in the 1990s? When it was a 60 or whatever $dollar cart.
Right.
And it was like they're doing used copies for $150. Then it's like, wait, what is this game? So I think that's what always struck with me. So,
Yeah. Now, Rich, Tom and I have talked about Shining Force a lot on here. That's that and Fire Emblem are just two of my favorite tactical RPGs. Like Final Fantasy Tactics for the Game Boy Advance is really good too. But I would hang my hat on Fire Emblem or Shining Force.
Yeah, big Shining Force here.
The Shin Megami Tensei, I think it's Devil Summoner series, is a tactical RPG too, and that's really fun.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. They're out for the 3DS too. The ports from 3DS anyway are really good.
All right, I'll have to check that out.
Rich, you got a note on here for something about the most expensive game you own right now. What is that?
Yeah, and this was having me think about just you're mentioning these things, and this is stuff that like I haven't just been buying recently. I guess it's the difference between collecting for years and then buying stuff now. The most expensive game I own right now, single game, like not like arcade cabinet or whatever, is Snatcher for the Sega CD. There was he moved to Barrington now, but there's a video game / toy store maybe 10 minutes from where I lived in my apartment. And I would be there a lot because I bought toys and video games. And I got to know the guy. And when he got in and he called me and said, I have a copy of Snatcher. Do you want to buy it for $150? And again, it was one of those things where I wasn't making a lot of money, and that was a big purchase at the time. But I'm glad I did because one, it's a great game. It's I guess you'd call it a visual novel. There's some shooting parts, but they're not great. But the story itself is pretty good. And it's the Metal Gear Solid guy's first game. And I can't think of his name right now.
Hideo Kojima?
Kojima, yes. And yeah, it's awesome. And it's just right now, as everyone knows, there's the bubble going on with video games where you have the people grading them, bringing it up. You have the people buying stuff because they haven't been going on vacations and stuff. So there's extra money driving stuff up. So this game, which I thought at the time $150 was a lot of money, is worth like $2,000 now.
Wow.
And it's just like,
Jesus.
Do you sell this stuff now knowing that it's a bubble and it might go down, or do you hang on to this stuff because maybe you won't see it again? So it's hard to to judge that.
And that $2,000 could turn into $4,000 or $5,000 within a couple of years too.
Yeah, unless the bubble bursts like in a year or two and everything goes back down again.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I saw your note on there. That's cool. That's really cool.
It's just like I said at the time. Especially with the arcade games, I was sit and wait until I found one that was cheap enough, or one that I knew I could, fix myself. But now nothing's cheap, so it's almost hard to collect anymore.
Yeah,
just play what you got. Yeah.
That's a good point. The last thing I had on here, as far as anything that was game related, was one of those Tudor Electric Football, the tabletop games. I never had one, but I always thought they were the neatest things, and didn't realize that they were still making them. So, Bob, you said you have one of these, right? I
did, man. I got one of these. I had one of these in addition to a rod hockey table, and I'm pretty sure I got them the same year for Christmas. And so I got it, I guess, I don't remember what year it was, but it was around when the I don't even remember if they even played in the Super Bowl against each other, but it was the Broncos and the Giants are who came with it. And I, even though like I read the book, I did everything, and I still didn't really understand how to play it, but I used to just put them on there and like just let them run into each other. But it was really cool.
Are these these are the ones that vibrate, right? Like you put the guys on there and it all shakes the board.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yep.
what I would do is I would set them up, and like I would get frustrated because I would set them up and I would set all the dials and make them move, make the bases so that it made them go the way they were supposed to go, and none of them ever went the way they were supposed to go. So I would just end up getting pissed off and just turn the vibration all the way up until they all just flipped over.
You made a great comment there about the not sure how to play it, because I always wondered that too. I've never actually done anything with one, but I just assumed that's all it was. They're just running into each other.
So, well, no, so they have these little control bases, and what it is it has a little dial, and you slide the player onto the little base, and you set the dial, and the dial's supposed to set the direction that they move once it starts to vibrate. But inevitably, they never go the way you want them to go. But in theory, the way it works is you design, you set your offensive line and your defensive line up to block each other. And then you set your running back to go through the hole that the offensive line ideally opens up. And, if you're going to, I still did not, like, it's been a while, so I don't remember exactly how, passes work. I know that they do go where, like, the quarterback has this little flingy arm and you put this little tiny foam football on it and you let it, like, you fling it with that. And I guess if it, obviously, the receiver's not going to catch the damn football, but I think if it hits the player, they catch it or something like that. It's really interesting, and I'm sure someone out there knows how to make it work. But me, as a 7 or 8 year old, whatever I was when I got it, I did not friggin' have the patience or anything for it. So I just really, for me, it was more like, oh hey, let's make a like an earthquake. And no, Rick, it wasn't soccer.
Oh no, I know. It's just that had me think of this that other thing, the Sudoku
gotcha.
game. Yeah.
I thought you
Um,
were messing with me because
No.
remember when Coach Barchuk had the football shirt and people tried to tell him, yo, that's Spanish for football, and he goes, no, it says football, FUTBOL, football.
Oh God. Now you mentioned this too, because you said you had a rod hockey table.
Yeah.
But you would like something a little bit more fancier than that.
Oh, dude, I want a straight up bubble hockey table. Those things are sweet. I love playing. There's a place down here called Game Time, and anytime I'm at Game Time, I'm playing bubble hockey over in the corner with a beer. And, dude, it's so fun. I really want one, but that's gonna have to wait until I win the lottery and I buy my Neo Geo and my TurboGrafx 16 and my full size Turtles arcade game and like every version of NBA Jam. I want like a whole setup of NBA Jams, so we can play against each other and stuff. And then, so here's bucket list for winning the lottery. So they have that Mario Kart GP or GT, the arcade version, and it's got the Namco characters too. So it's got like Pac-Man and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you can connect them and play against each other. So I want 8 of those all in a room so that we can play against each other. I'm going to fly you guys in, obviously, for this because I won the lottery, so I can do what I want. I'm going to fly you guys in, and we're just going to get drunk and play Mario Kart.
Hey, I'm in. I'm
like
down.
it. Yeah.
I'm down. No doubt. Those bubble hockey tables, though, I remember playing those. And if I'm not wrong, please correct me if I'm wrong. Team USA versus the Russians, right?
So Team USA versus the Russians or Team USA versus Canada. It really depended upon where you were. And then, the Flyers had them in what was then the FU Center. It's the Wachovia Center now, but they have Flyers ones up there. And I think theirs are, at least at the time, it was like the Flyers versus the Devils. They had another one where it was like the Phantoms versus the Hershey Bears or something like that. But they had some custom ones up there, so that was cool too. They had them in the concourse.
Nice. All right, we've done a bunch of games, but Rich, I love the notes you put on here, and I think this is a great way to kind of close this up because we can do. I think this would be a nice teaser potentially to a future episode. But you had mentioned some things about some comics here. You want to kind of enlighten us here on? on some things?
Yeah, when Bob first mentioned this, I guess I didn't get the idea that it was just video games until I was reading through the notes and realizing the notes was just called bucket list games. So I was thinking of regrets, and I've managed to keep most of the video games I bought. So that's why the video game collection is good, because I bought them cheap and just kind of held on to them. But comics, I've always had a pretty big comic book collection. I collected mostly in the 90s and the early 2000s. When I mentioned I worked at the law firm, that was 2 blocks from the Fat Jacks in Rittenhouse Square. So I would go every Wednesday during lunch and pick up new books and look for the old stuff.
Nice.
And again, I was picking up books when they were relatively cheap before everyone started getting into comics as an investment and stuff like that. But when the iPhone 3GS came out, that was the first iPhone I ever got. And at the time, I was reading a book called Masters of Doom that was about how the video game Doom was created, and John Carmack and John Romero, and they were talking a lot about shareware games, how you would put out this game and you'd give away levels for free, and people would kind of go to BBSs, go to early websites, download the shareware games, and then start playing it, and then send in the money to get the full game mailed back to them. And the iOS store reminded me a lot of that. It was, like I said, I was really getting into it. So I wanted to learn how to build an iOS app or an iOS game. I never did any game development, but I did build a couple of apps. But at the time, you needed a Mac to develop an iOS or develop stuff for the iOS. And I wasn't making a whole lot of money, but I had a couple of comics that I knew were worth decent money then. And I put together a stack of them and got about $4,000 for the comics, which, I mean, to me then, that was huge. That was, especially for, like I said, when I go through the list, it was 10 books, maybe 15. But had I held on to them now, especially with grading, now where you can send off your stuff and get it verified and get a grade, it would have been tens of thousands. And these are books I bought back 1 or 2 of them for much more than what I spent on them originally, what I sold them for. But I wish I held on, because there's stuff that I'm not going to spend the money on to get it back. Just going through some of the books, it was like a Showcase 22, which was the first appearance of Hal Jordan, Green Lantern. The movie came out and sucked, but it was still, for some reason, every time one of these comic book characters has a movie, it jumps in price and just kind of stays there. So there was also an Amazing Spider-Man 13, which was the first Mysterio, who, of course, was in a movie. Yeah. Amazing Spider-Man 129, the first Punisher. Amazing Spider-Man 40, first Rhino. The first Venom was in there. I was a big Green Lantern collector, so along with the first Hal Jordan, I had the first Sinestro, the first Guy Gardner, the first Star Sapphire. And then another big one was X-Men 94, which was the first new team that was introduced in Giant Size 1. So it would have been like the 4th appearance of Wolverine and the 2nd appearance of Nightcrawler, Storm, those guys.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, I did really good, because I bought them much less than what I sold them for. I think for the biggest one was the Showcase 22, probably that first Hal Jordan. The first couple of pages were missing the corners, and I think, again, it at the time, to me anyway, it was astronomical. I spent $300 on that, and even with the condition it was in, I wish I kept that one. Like I said, it's a bit of a bummer. I did buy back eventually the out of that list. The only one was the Spider-Man 300, the first Venom, because I just wanted that back in the collection. But yeah, but again, you never know when prices are going up, and I think as long as you're getting more for it than you paid, you're doing okay. So right. I guess you really shouldn't feel terrible. And at least to me, at least with this purchase, with the computer and the stuff like that, that's stuff that I was able to throw on the resume, and I'm sure just overall the jobs I got from that probably paid off, or made up for, I guess, some of the regret.
Right, right.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. I mean, kind of not cool that you had to sell them for that reason, but I
Yeah.
mean, awesome that you actually had those. You know, that's
Yeah.
wow.
I mean, my collection wasn't anywhere that near that impressive, but I'm still kind of bummed that I actually sold off, I think 3.5 long boxes, just to move stuff to get rid of it, because I thought that I was making a large move geographically, and that didn't end up happening, and so I just kind of regret getting rid of my entire collection based on something that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's cool though, on top of that, and to make up for this a little bit, the last bonus I got from work, I did, was it the last? I guess it was the one before last, right before the whole lockdown and stuff started and things started going up in price. I picked up a Turtles 1 second printing.
Oh, cool.
And since I'm not going to say, I mean, I'm really into Turtles. You guys saw in the video behind me that I had all the figures and stuff in my office. But since I bought it, it's tripled in price.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think that's 2 years. Within 2 years, it tripled in price. So,
Oh wow,
yeah.
that's crazy.
Dude, speaking of Turtles, I really wish I still had all that stuff from when we were younger, man.
Oh yeah, I bought back a lot of the stuff I had. He-Man too. I bought back a lot of the He-Man figures, and I had them all as a kid.
I still
And,
have mine. Actually, my dad has them. The Castle Grayskull and everything. It's actually it's boxed up. Funny enough, my kids actually uncovered. I had a bunch of Centurions. You remember those?
Yeah, those guys.
Yeah. But we cannot find any of the actual character figures. But I found a lot of like the airplanes and the stuff that shoots missiles and whatnot. So it's a lot of just hodgepodge at this point. But I was thinking about it and I was like, there's probably a few dollars there. But I get more enjoyment seeing them enjoy it. So that's cool. But one thing you mentioned, kind of going back a few minutes, you mentioned shareware, and you were talking about on BBSs or some early websites. Do you remember the shareware magazines?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So you said that, and that sparked an interest, and I remember getting. That's the first time I remember playing Commander Keen. I got a 3.5, in the mail through a shareware magazine. So.
So, all right. So along those same lines, do you remember going to software shows?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Wow. Oh, huh. I do. Yeah.
I remember going to the Garden State racetrack with my dad and one of his friends and going up there and got we got a bunch of floppies, and then I got NHL 96, which I actually just found. So I'm packing, to get ready to move. And I'm going through my stuff, and I actually found the original disc of NHL 96 for the PC.
Oh, nice.
Because I'm not a pack rat.
Well, I think we all are. That's that's one thing. I one of these days I'm going to go through and see what I forgot of what I actually own, because there's got to be something in there.
Well, what's funny too is I found DVDs that you burned me, Tom, and I found DVDs that you burned me, Rich. Rich, the one that popped up right away was the Walt Disney Goes to War that you copied for me.
Yes.
Yeah. Tom, have you ever seen any of that stuff?
I can't say that I have.
It's all propaganda stuff that Disney made during World War II.
Oh.
The most famous one was the Deferrer's Face.
Yes.
Which won Oscar for best music.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's Donald Duck kind of daydreaming what it would be like to be a Nazi. So he's like hailing Hitler, and you see the famous pictures just of Donald dressed like Hitler all the time. That's where it came from.
Oh wow, huh?
There's also, it wasn't Disney. It was probably Warner Brothers, but there's a character called Private Snafu. All that I don't know why I enjoy it, but I like that whole period of history, propaganda stuff from the U.S. All the studios turned propaganda. Yeah.
I mean, it's also fun to hate Nazis. So
this is true.
Yeah, that's cool. That's pretty. I don't know, anything with the historical thing. I just think is fascinating to me. I'm big on it. So. But no, this has been fun. You guys have any last minute notes to kind of close up our two-parter here?
No, I'm glad that Rich was able to join us, man. I think this was great. I think down the line next week, 2 weeks from now, whatever you want to do, whenever you want to come back, Rich, you let us know, man. We'll be glad to have you back.
Yeah, I'll always come back. I'm around. This was fun. It's definitely fun. Just nice talking to you guys again too after a while.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that we've realized doing this is that it kind of forces a conversation, but it doesn't seem like that. It just seems like we're chatting. But they turn into some pretty good content. We've had a lot of fun with different things. Yeah, we don't get a lot of love for our wrestling episodes, so we try to steer clear of those.
It's funny you say that. I'm buying. Obviously, I'm a geek. I mean, I can't really hide that anymore with the toys and video game stuff we were talking about. Last week I just got a Fling 'em Sling 'em ring in the mail.
Nice.
The LGN ring for the big rubber guys.
Yeah.
I had a pile of the figures, but I didn't have a ring for them. So, but I haven't followed wrestling in a while. The last wrestling I remember watching was turning on the ECW reboot and watching the main event was the Big Show versus the Undertaker. And I think I turned it off as soon as they announced that was the main event and decided I was done with wrestling for a while.
That was the ECW or WC or what was it? WWECW was friggin' terrible. But dude, honestly, I got to tell you, and I know Tom can speak to this too, but give AEW a chance. I think you'd really dig it.
I watch a lot of YouTube, and for some reason, and it was right, so I guess I can't argue against it. It was showing me Japanese female wrestling, and it turns out a couple of the wrestlers from that I think are in AEW, like Riho, I think is one of them.
Yes.
And then there's this girl that wears like Sultan type pants. I think she's supposed to be a magical girl. I can't think of her name. Maybe anyway, it was entertaining, so I might try giving AEW a chance.
Yeah, right now is a really good time. They just got, CM Punk just came back. He's in AEW. Daniel Bryan, who is Bryan Danielson on the Indies, he's coming to AEW. It's a really, really good time. They're getting a lot of good people. Just some great and above and beyond that, it's just good wrestling. It's not what you were seeing in WWE. It's not the what's the word I'm looking for here? The mockery they made of ECW. They're doing really good stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's certainly worth checking out.
No, my wrestling memories are just like your guys. WWF Superstars on like Saturday mornings, and then in high school staying up till like 2 a.m. to watch ECW on Channel 48.
Yep. Oh, dude, that's the next. All right. So that's going to be the next episode we do on wrestling is going to be, we're going to be doing an ECW recap between you two. Because Rich, I know you were really into it, and Tom was going to the ECW arena.
Yeah, I was going to say, I never got to go to an actual show, and I really wish that I did.
I went to every house show from 98 into 2000.
I was roommates with Bob knows him, Matt, for a while, and he was doing D&D, hosting it at the apartment where I live too, so I got started playing. One of the other guys was dating an ex-girlfriend of Raven, and he had a pile of signed shirts and stuff like that he would just wear there because she didn't want them anymore, so he just kind of wore them wherever.
Nice.
That's so cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're gonna have to do that one. We'll have to do definitely have you on again. We'll have to do something with ECW or some comics or just anything because I think we could talk just about anything and have some fun with it.
Yeah, I was looking at your crypto show too, not crypto. Yeah, cryptocurrency. And that seemed like a neat topic. I didn't play around with that, but I was thinking. I don't know if this is something you guys would want to go into, but just like I said, going through from working help desk to being a software developer. This last job I had to deal with a lot of imposter syndrome. Because it was like where I'm working now is kind of a medical company, and we have a lot of people there who graduated from MIT, and they're programmers, but they have the biomedical degrees and stuff like that. And I'm a college dropout, so just dealing with that. And I've been there 3 years now, so obviously I got over it. But the first year was a little rough.
Huh.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's a great thing too.
Yeah.
We would like to talk to you about that and that whole process, because imposter syndrome, I think, is something that a lot of us go through, and to get your perspective, especially in that kind of environment, I think would be great.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, no, that definitely had fun these last couple nights recording these, and we got to do this again. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate your time on this, Rich, and kind of chit chatting with us, and we'll definitely do it again.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. Until next time, we have been the Noise Brigade. Keep it tight, and we will see you next time.